Welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. The Switch is a collaboration between Baseload Capital and DNB, aiming to accelerate the green transition. We want our podcast to be a central hub for knowledge exchange within the fields of renewables and green transition. Hosted by Kristina Hagström-Ilevska and produced by Emil and Jacob.
I'm super excited to have Baker Hughes with me here today, represented by Taylor and Ajit. And we are going to talk to them about many things, but personally, I'm a bit curious about what is actually an energy technology company. What do? They have been on the market for more than 30 years and they have extensive experience. So how will they make sure to be a part of the switch, moving into a greener transition? I know, and I noted that they've said, we are going to take energy forward. What does that actually mean? I know that they're moving into geothermal quite aggressively. So how come is that? And what do they actually see the potential is? And what do we need to actually succeed when it comes to geothermal? Oh, so many questions that I really want to get some answer to. So let's dive into the presentation of Taylor and Ajit so that we can get going asking these questions. I hope you're ready for this. Here we go.
Today we will have the pleasure to talk to two guests from Baker Hughes. One of them which have spent 25 years in the company and is now the Vice President of Geothermal. And the other guest is a geothermal innovations leader at Baker Hughes and a passionate geothermal advocate. During this episode, we will discuss the latest innovations that will potentially shape the green future and the role of technology in this green shift and way of making geothermal really scale in this golden decade of geothermal. Let's give a warm switch welcome to Ajit Menon and Taylor Mattie.
Welcome to The Switch, not another podcast. Today with me I have Taylor and Ajit.
Hello, hello.
Hello. We've
Hi.
had an introduction of you already, so everybody knows who you are. I'm very happy to have you here. You're representing Baker Hughes. On your website, it says, we are Baker Hughes, an energy technology company. I love it. But what does it mean? Ajit, what is it?
So, we're a company that develops technology that's used in the harnessing, delivery, and extraction of energy. We are actually building tools to drill wells, to extract oil and gas, also to extract geothermal energy. We build turbines that are used for compression of gas, but also used for hydrogen. Hydrogen fuel source turbines. So we are agnostic really to the type of energy, and we develop technology for the energy industry. Now it's fair to say we started developing technology for oil and gas because at the turn of the 20th century when we were formed, that was the primary source of energy. But as you know today, that's changed. And so we also focus on the renewable side, specifically geothermal and hydrogen.
Wow. You're a big company, more than 70,000 employees. Mm-hmm. You're where you have a presence in 120 countries all over the world. How does the company thrive in that? I mean, you, Ajit, you've been here for 25 years. Mm-hmm. How come?
Because it's not like working for one company. In 25 years, I've worked in many different environments doing completely different things. And, whether they were involved in oil and gas, also, I was like about 10 years ago, I was involved in geothermal projects in the Philippines. I've worked, in Southeast Asia. I've worked in India. I've worked in North America, doing very diverse things. So I think that's the reason why, 25 years sounds a long time if you were doing the same thing for 25 years. But in this industry,
How long have you been here? Taylor?
About 5 years, maybe 6 years.
So you're the newcomer.
So I represent the new blood coming into the industry. Yeah.
What an honor to have both sides here. Yeah. Why did you come to Baker Hughes?
You know, it may sound cliche to say it, but I really think Baker Hughes has the ability to change the world. And that's, like I said, it sounds cliche, but it's true, right? The technology that we develop to enable geothermal, to enable carbon capture, to enable hydrogen will make an impact on the lives of people, and they won't even realize it. And it makes an impact on our climate change as a society. And it makes an impact on individual communities that need clean energy and desire clean energy.
That must be very inspiring to come into, and it must be very inspiring for you to hear as well.
Yes, and you know, it's very similar, right? You know, when I started, you always feel you're doing something to benefit the world in terms of delivering energy to consumers. And of course, today, that's even more exacerbated by having to do that, but at the same time, mitigate climate change. And we find that our employees, you know, they support this, they're completely bought into this. You know, our CEO committed us to net zero, I think a full 2 years before you saw the bulk of the oil and gas industry say things like that. And so it was quite daring at the time, and I think the employee base really was excited about it and supported it.
Great. Then can you tell, we've been talking a little bit about what actually you do and what different parts of industries you're moving into, but can you tell us more about the latest innovations that Baker Hughes has that you believe will shape the future? You mentioned it will make a difference.
Well, one such innovation that spans all the technology we develop, and you know, which is energy technology, is additive manufacturing.
What is that?
Well, additive manufacturing is where you use machines and powder to produce parts. So you don't have to go through the traditional machining process. You can produce designs that are very difficult to machine, and you can do this, through designs remotely. So it's a way to enable better design, but at the same time lower the cost of producing the technology.
You can almost think of it like 3D printing in any material you can imagine. Titanium, plastic, carbon fiber. And it's very unique in that it enables these insane geometries for pumps, for packers, for things that you might need to enable the finite technologies for clean energy.
Interesting. Is this one of the things that you think will shape the future?
One of the many things, for sure.
Anything else?
And I think we got some validation on that, right, from the DOE.
So we are involved with projects from the Department of Energy that is using specifically additive manufacturing in geothermal applications and seeing how that can be applied to reduce the cost, which in turn brings geothermal online to more people around the world.
Are there any other innovations or technologies you can share with us that will affect the climate and the green transition?
Sure. When we look at geothermal energy, in fact, any energy source, the real secret to adoption is to make it as competitive as possible, as affordable as possible. So we're certainly focused on innovation and developments on being able to drill wells faster, because when you drill a well, time is money, and so by drilling wells faster, we reduce the cost. And so technology development on drilling in terms of being able to do it faster is key. Other innovations which may not seem like earth-shattering, especially today after COVID, are the leveraging of remote operations, remote support of experts, automation. So we can then do things on a much larger scale without having to build traditional infrastructure. So
how can that actually work? That's very exciting. So you have operations and you can moderate them with machine learning. You
are using hubs with experts to support operations with minimum support on the ground, right? So you can then extend, if you look at geothermal, for example, it's very spread out very isolated with a small concentrated group of experts. So how do you get that expertise across a wider area and be able to scale that without having to wait until you've trained a huge number of people? This is how we deploy remote operations. Automation is really where we, where we try and automate what we do on site as much as possible. So it needs less human intervention at the rig site, which also improves safety as well.
Will that improve the predictability as well of?
Yes, that is absolutely right.
And this, you're mentioning wells now, but is this something that we can use over all the different energy sources? Solar, wind, all of them?
Yes, you can use remote ops to control and monitor different energy deployments. We certainly use it not just in the construction of wells, but also in the operation of turbines, in understanding, are they operating at their optimal and are they operating as efficiently as possible, which of course, the more efficiently you operate a turbine, the less wasted energy you're generating.
Interesting. What you're saying here, and which is quite interesting, is that technology will make a big difference in the green transition overall. Is Baker Hughes one of those who's going to deliver that technology?
Absolutely. I think if you look at history, technology really, for us, drives everything. It's driven the development of oil and gas, and it will certainly drive the development of renewables.
Now it's time for conscious questions.
The first question being, what have you done good for the climate this week? The second thing is, have you seen anything bad being done to the climate this week? Or do you have any guilty pleasures when it comes to climate? Who wants to go first?
I can go.
Yeah, sure.
I do have some guilty pleasures when it comes to climate. And really it's binge watching British murder mystery crime series, which I do a lot of. I don't really admit this to many people. It takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of energy to binge watch all these different...
The streaming.
The streaming, the shows. And then you think about it, then you run out of shows to watch, and then you go look and try to find new ones. You watch one halfway and find it's no good, and so you stop watching.
You go with another one.
So it's not good.
Yeah. It's consuming energy, but it is kind of relaxing. I must admit to that guilty pleasure as well. Definitely. What about you, Taylor?
I think I'll take the first question. What have I done for the climate this week? So this week is actually CERAweek in Houston, where we have a lot of leaders from the industry around the world meeting to discuss how do we foster the energy transition and supporting the pillars of energy, oil and gas and geothermal and wind and solar and hydrogen. And so a lot of what I've been doing at the week is communicating with people, advocating the need for geothermal to be a bigger player in the energy space and a bigger player to make all of these aspirations come true of green hydrogen, of carbon mitigation and management. So this week I've just done a lot of work to spread the message and to spread advocacy and awareness.
I think you did a good job. So let's actually go down into that subject, because I have a couple of questions when it comes to geothermal, where the both of you are focusing. Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting. Geothermal, Baker Hughes has been involved in geothermal energy for 40 years already. It's almost like it's something new people are talking about now again, but what do you see are the main turns that actually is giving geothermal the upper hand right now?
Well, it's a contradiction, right? Because geothermal is hot, but now it's also cool.
Ooh, good one there. If I had an amazing button, I would actually push that one now.
And really, the reason for that is really down to the recognition, quite widely, that we have to do something about climate. And in order to do something about climate, you need a renewables energy mix that can produce baseload capacity, that can produce continuous supply of energy. And geothermal energy is such an energy source, right? If you look at the way renewables have been used in the past, it's to supplement the baseload capacity from other energy sources through wind and solar. But with geothermal, that can be your baseload capacity, and then you can supplement that with wind and solar. Now, I think there are other drivers in terms of many groups driving innovation to take geothermal away from its traditional geographic restrictions.
What does that mean?
So if you look at geothermal today, it's largely exists around the Ring of Fire, the volcanic areas of the world. Because you need two things for geothermal. You need heat, and then you need steam, right? But, heat can be obtained anywhere by drilling deep enough. But you don't have the steam everywhere. But if you can then inject the fluid into those wells in other places, circulate that and produce energy, then you have the ability to expand where geothermal can be used. And so there's a lot of interest and excitement about that. There's also, geothermal is a versatile source of energy. It's not just for power generation, it's also for heating and cooling. In fact, this is nothing new. The Romans used geothermal energy for heating, but today, if you look at emissions, a significant chunk of emissions is coming from heating and cooling, not necessarily just power generation. And so there's been a huge interest in geothermal for direct use in heating, led by Europe. And now also we're seeing that in the northeast of the United States as well.
I guess that it also gives countries the energy independence it needs as well. I mean, the world today is very chaotic. We have a war going on in Ukraine, and geothermal could actually give that base for independence.
I would say, prior to recent events, there was already a drive, especially in Europe, to focus on geothermal for heating, just to reduce dependence on gas. What's happening, sadly, in the world today is only validating that and going to reinforce those moves.
I agree with you. I wish it was differently, but with that said, I mean, how can there are still challenges within geothermal. What are the main challenges and how can we address them?
I'll start with the how, and I go back to the beginning, and it's through technology. And I take you back, because the challenges in geothermal are really taking it to scale at an affordable cost that is competitive within the renewables energy mix. And if you look at wind and solar, for example, when people first started deploying them, it was expensive. It was and no one talks about that anymore. Why? Because through focus and technology development, those costs have been brought down, and those renewable energy sources have been made competitive. So our focus is on developing technology that will not just reduce cost, but also uncertainty and risk in the development of geothermal projects. Because we want all of you investors to invest in geothermal. And by making it a more attractive investment with less risk and less uncertainty of outcome, we feel that's going to stimulate the growth of the industry, and that's the role we can play as a technology developer.
And I'm going to challenge that. Because this is a conversation that, I mean, the things you're saying, I've heard from so many people. And I've not been in the business for many years now, but I know that the conversation has been there. What's different now? How can we address this? I mean, the scalability, all of these problems has been there for a long time. Will we really change this?
So I'll add that, what we see going on right now has been referred to as the golden decade, or the geothermal decade. And it's widely perceived that we're moving into this 10-year period of highly accelerated geothermal development, investment, and awareness based on the past 40 years of work that's been done on building this foundation in policy and technology and whatnot. One of the greatest strengths of geothermal is also one of its greatest weaknesses, and that is its footprint. So if you look at the actual physical footprint of a geothermal power plant, it's very benign. It's very small. You might not even know what it is. But if you're driving down the road and you see a wind turbine, you know what that is. You see solar panels, you know what it is, you understand what it's doing. And just the very foundation of understanding that as a wind turbine, it's providing clean energy. I like that, or I don't like that. Just the very awareness of it leads into policy development that fosters the actual need for technology development and then eventually the development of geothermal itself.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in there. What is different today is demand.
You can push it.
Oh. Yeah, because I actually disagree with you.
There you go. I love it.
Because what is different today is demand.
Right.
And at the end of the day, we all have the best intentions of life, but if there's no demand for your product, there will be no interest, there will be no growth, and there will be no development of it, right? So what has changed is demand. What's driving that demand? The things we talked about. The wide recognition across many industries and governments and people in general that we have to do something about climate. And if we have to do something about climate, all renewables are fair game in the mix, as part of the solution. And geothermal has obvious benefits because of the base load continuous capacity that you can get out of it. So that's what's changed. The demand has generated interest in all forms of renewables.
And I know that the demand has driven something that you're working more with, Taylor, the green hydrogen. How can this help? Can you explain to us what it is and how it will help?
Sure. So green hydrogen is simply just hydrogen that has been generated from a green energy source. So using power from a wind turbine or solar to generate hydrogen with a process. And it could also be with geothermal. The challenge with using wind or solar for green hydrogen generation is that the sun is only shining half the day. And if you have a storm or there's calm winds, you don't have power being produced by these other renewable sources to generate the hydrogen. But what Ajit's mentioned a couple times, the term base load, it's always on, it's always operating 100% of the time. And so with that, you have a reliable energy source to produce this green hydrogen. Now, why does that make a difference? Why is hydrogen such a great thing when combined with geothermal? Historically, geothermal has been very geographically restricted, like we said before. If your geography wasn't blessed to be in a ring of fire or an area near volcanic activity where you might naturally have geothermal, you can't really utilize the resource, right? And it's a local thing. You can't transfer heat long distances like you can other commodities like oil and gas. But that's what sort of changes with hydrogen. It becomes a pseudo commodity, because when you take the energy from geothermal and you transform it into the form of a hydrogen, like a compressed hydrogen tank, you can take that hydrogen and ship it long distances to be consumed elsewhere around the world. And so green hydrogen...
What could we do with that?
Many things. I mean, you can
water. Is it?
You can run machines. You can you can run tractors. You can run equipment, and so really, what you're doing to geothermal is making geothermal energy transportable. That's what you're doing.
Okay.
It becomes a commodity, like oil and gas, right? And you can, as you said, you can use it for many things, and it's the way that I think we're going to move in the future.
So that really shows a good example of how geothermal becomes an ecosystem, because it's not only producing, it's not only producing electricity or heat, it's actually...
Yeah, and I don't like the word, I'm going to say this, I don't like the word commodity, because geothermal is far more important than that. What I think green hydrogen gives you is access to energy and a chance for communities to monetize a resource they have, but not necessarily a retail electricity market where they are, right? So it's also as well a way to raise up communities in parts of the world where they enjoy having a geothermal resource, but not the market to actually get any use out of it.
Good.
I'd hit the awesome button.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
we can if we turn it around or something. Good. Is there anything, if you would like summarize this part when it comes to the geothermal part of what you're doing in Baker Hughes, is there anything that you would like to say to investors, developers, or other people who are actually listening to this?
I would start by saying, when I think a lot of the perception around geothermal is power generation, right? And just how come it can be used to turn your lights on. But there is such an incredible utility for it in simply heat. And even in applications that are low temperature, less than 100 degrees Celsius, it can be used to support very heavy industrial processes that require heat as a a subsidy for the other additional heat you would need into it, with like natural gas or things like that. And then it could also be used for heating our homes, and you have the ability to have this very satisfying feeling that I'm warm, and it's because of the heat below my feet that's keeping my house warm and keeping my family happy.
I would say if there's one thought I want to leave people with on geothermal is, we know how to harness geothermal energy. We've been doing it for 40 years. What I think is exciting today is how we're addressing costs or risk and uncertainty in order to create demand for geothermal, in order for it to be a great choice for a consumer who not only wants an affordable source of energy, but also wants to do right by the environment.
Good summary. Thank you. I usually ask a question, is there any kind of uncomfortable conversation? Is there any of a kind we need to have? Is there anything that is a topic that you actually would like to mention here today? What would that be?
This goes back to what I would say earlier is, within the geothermal community, it's very well recognized the potential that it has. And as a result, a lot of people that work in geothermal are very passionate people, and they're very excited about this. The uncomfortable thing that we need to do is get this to a larger audience, get this to more people who might not understand the potential for clean energy right below them, and foster the development of this on a much larger scale, because it's there. It is there in many, many places. It's just waiting to be tapped into.
See, I kind of disagree with that, because I kind of feel what is uncomfortable to me is really the opposite, right? They say if you build it, they will come. I think people don't need to understand geothermal. It needs to be available to them at an affordable cost, producing reliable energy. And if the geothermal industry, if we do that and focus on that, then everyone will know what geothermal is, because they'll be using it.
It's a very interesting discussion, and we put this, might as well have been an awesome button for you answering that one. But I think that, what comes first, the hen or the egg in this situation? It's quite interesting. You have two different perspectives here. I hope that both of them are working in the same
I think so.
speed.
They do.
We have a yin and yang in Baker.
There you go.
The balance.
The balance.
Now it's time for the disruptive questions.
How do we bridge the gap between the divisiveness between the right and the left on the topic of climate change?
I think you have to look at it as what do people want? No one wants to live in a dirty world, but at the same time they want to ensure that their livelihoods are protected, and that they have access to energy at the right cost to live their lives as comfortably as they can. If you look, one of the single biggest drivers for change in living standards is access to affordable energy. So really we need to change the conversation to how we can harness, other forms of energy, renewable forms of energy, how we can mitigate emissions from existing forms of energy to produce energy for the consumer that is not only clean, but also affordable. I think if you do that and focus on that, you can bridge this divide.
I must say that I agree with you. I think that we need to talk about what humans need in the end, and remember that we are not right and left in this situation. So a good example. So that was my sunshine to you. So now my question is, who do you want to give sunshine to?
Sunshine!
Actually, I want to give sunshine to whoever set up the agenda for CERAweek, because I've never seen so much focus at this conference on renewables.
It's interesting, actually. It's an oil and gas conference, and I have not seen oil and gas anywhere. Talking, at least. I've seen them talking, I've seen them appearing, but the topics are hydrogen and all these other things.
I think it's both. I think it's a balance, but I think what's visible this time is renewables, because it's not been visible in the past.
And I would direct a ray of light to the International Geothermal Association. This is the group that bridges all of the different sub-communities of geothermal, the operators, the technology providers, the consumers, into one unified body to project outward a single message that helps support what geothermal is doing and bring awareness to it to those who may not even understand what it is.
That's a good note to end on. What are your thoughts now? We've been sitting here for almost 30 minutes. What do you bring with you from this conversation we've had?
I would say the future is bright. We have at this point a level of conversation for geothermal and for how it can be connected to other renewables and how it supports the general agenda of climate change to a level that hasn't been seen before, right? It's never gotten this much attention. It needs more attention, but we're on this ride right now that's only going to get better in terms of how we're able to utilize it and develop it and make the most of it to offset climate change.
I mean, what I take from this conversation is that we need to, make it simple as to why we need, geothermal, why it brings value. We tend to be, being an energy technology company in an industry that is technology focused, very detailed on the technology and how it brings benefits. When really what the consumer, what investors want to hear is why what's the advantages and how of geothermal energy and how can it play its role.
Good summary from both of you. Sometimes you don't need to add so much. I thank you very much for being here, and I also thank you for being advocates for geothermal. I think it's very important that we have representatives from Baker and Hughes here as well. So thank you very much on behalf of the team of The Switch, Not Another Podcast.
Thank you
for having us.
Good. Thank you. Do you want to try now?
Felt good.
Felt good. So let's summarize this interesting conversation. Well, to say the least, there is really a lot of collaboration to do for a company like Baker Hughes, making sure to put the different stakeholders with each other, talking to each other. But what I bring with me most of all is the conversation about that it is really about you and me. We need to make a renewable energy mix affordable to you and to me. It needs to be accessible, so we don't have to think about the choice we make. It should just be a good choice. And I think that this is the big and important role for companies like Baker Hughes, making sure that energy industry is talking to each other in order to make sure we can scale and give opportunities to you and me so we can make the switch. In order to make sure to spread the word, please help us share, communicate with us, and make sure you send this version to someone that you think should listen in and be a part of the switch. Until we meet the next time, please take care of yourself, and if you can, someone else.